I had lost all respect for him, and to some extent, by extension, I lost some respect for her. I didn't feel it was my place to say, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I might have been wrong. So I shut up, but I couldn't remain close to them and gradually grew apart and lost contact. Hi, this is Mike Balaban, and welcome to another episode of BAMMER Talks. I'm going to take advantage today of the fact that I've had a cold the last couple of days and my voice is a bit huskier than usual, so I'll enjoy it while it lasts. Today, I'd like to talk about the whole issue of giving others relationship advice or receiving relationship advice from others. You know, when we're really close to people and we observe them enter a relationship with a new partner, and we just feel there's something wrong about it, or maybe it seems like a toxic relationship or the way they're treating each other. Should you or should you not say something? You know, should you intervene and give your opinion, particularly if the person is a really close friend? And I'm going to talk about this from the vantage point of being the person giving the advice and having also been in a relationship where advice was given to me. And I'll tell you my bias. After having lived through both those experiences, my bias is to stay the hell out of everybody else's relationship and let them figure it out for themselves. Every relationship is different. Everyone's need is different. And no one really knows what an individual needs from another person except that person, him or herself. And similarly, nobody knows what's going on deep inside a relationship, or should know what's going on deep inside a relationship, except the two people, assuming it's a couple, that are involved in that relationship themselves. And so for someone outside, no matter how close and how well-meaning, to weigh in with their opinion, if you're going to do it, be extremely careful, diplomatic, judicious, qualifying it, but letting them know that you love them and you have their interest at heart, and whatever they want is fine by you, but just from your observation as an outsider who is close to them, this is what you're noticing. So the two examples that I will share. When I was in my late 20s, I was close to a woman in New York who I'd known in undergraduate school at Brown University, very pretty, talented architect. And she got involved with a guy in grad school at the Harvard Grad School of Design. And eventually they moved to New York and got married. And I attended their wedding. Got closer to both of them. He was gorgeous, of course. And everything seemed to be going along swell until about 6 months after the wedding. He surprised his bride, his wife, by coming to her and sheepishly admitting that he'd been having an affair with someone else and that he needed time apart from her to figure out what he wanted to do. And she was shell-shocked, gobsmacked, you know, slapped in the face, however you want to call it. And I, as her close friend, when she informed me what was going on, was equally stunned. And so he moved out and got his own place, and she was heartbroken. And not surprisingly, being close to her and living on the next block, I heard all the sob stories, all the inside dirt. And I grew to really dislike him. Certainly, I lost all respect for him. Within a few months, he'd made up his mind. He wanted to get back together with her. And he came back, and perhaps he apologized profusely. Perhaps he somehow was convincing. I don't know. I wasn't there on the fly on the wall. But all I know is she accepted him back into his life, and it seemed like she was totally forgiving. And I couldn't look him in the eye. I had lost all respect for him, and to some extent, by extension, I lost some respect for her. I didn't feel it was my place to say, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I might have been wrong. So I shut up, but I couldn't remain close to them and gradually grew apart and lost contact. Now, a couple of decades later, she and I were reconnected briefly, and then a few years afterwards got reconnected again and became close. And by that time, I found out that she had just divorced her husband. They'd been together 30 plus years. I said to her, I assume you understand how and why we grew apart. She goes, "No, why? I had no idea. I thought it was just time." I said, I pulled away. I couldn't watch him do to you what I saw him do to you, and you take it. She goes, well, I wish you'd said something because you were right. Turns out he was having affairs the entire 3 decades they were married, and in fact ended up using a lot of their life savings for retirement towards some young floozy, for lack of a more charitable word, that he had taken up in the last few years of their marriage. So she ended up having to work longer in her life than she would have otherwise because her husband took a lot of their savings, and they're divorced and they barely speak to each other except because of the grown kids. So on the one hand, you could say maybe I should have said something. On the other hand, I use that as an example of why I shouldn't get up close inside somebody's relationship. I shouldn't know the warts and everything that's going on. The only people in those situations that should be aware of everything in the relationship are the two parties involved and perhaps a therapist. That's my take on it. Now, from the other perspective, I was in a 12-year relationship and ended up remaining co-owning and co-living partners with my ex for 8 more years, believe it or not. So we were together 20 years in New York until a couple of years ago. And we were always very different from the beginning. In the end, those differences were what didn't allow us to make it through the rest of our lives together. It just got so exhausting having to compromise and give up parts of ourselves that the other person just didn't fit with in order to be together. But it took that long to find it out. And during those 12 years, I loved every minute of it. It was work, but I'm up for the challenge. And I loved having a partner who thought about me all the time and who I thought about. And I loved knowing that I had someone who had my interest at heart, who was the most honest person I'd ever met, who shared my values, who I was attracted to. We just weren't enough alike, as it turned out. But I would not give up those 12 years or even 20 years for anything. And if I hadn't had that experience, I might never have had a long relationship. Who knows? But during that time, from the very beginning, I had a really close friend and another close friend who was my ex, and I think was still in love with me, who both kept carping in my ear. We don't understand what you're doing with him. You don't seem like a good fit. You know, what is he giving you? You've changed a lot. You're not the spontaneous, carefree, fun-loving friend you were before. And I kind of had to say, look, guys, when you get involved in a relationship, immediately that person becomes your first priority. You change. That's just the way it is. Number two, it's not that I'm not available to you. I'm just not available to you at your beck and call whenever you want because I have somebody else to think about besides myself and you that I didn't have before. So yes, I've changed, and maybe I am a little bit less spontaneous. But you know what? I love having what I love, and I'm willing to give that up for what I got. And, one of them will still say now, I was right. And I'm like, well, maybe you were right that it wasn't going to work, but I didn't know that. And you didn't know what I was getting inside the relationship. And to each of you, it looked like I was the one doing all the compromising because he is a much less flexible personality than I am. I'm somewhat of a chameleon. I can change when I go to bed, when I go to the bathroom, what time I eat. It doesn't matter to me. I gave up certain activities because he wasn't as social as me. He didn't ask me to give them up. I chose not to do them as often because I preferred to be with him. And I also thought, if I do all the things I did before he came into my life and he doesn't do them with me, is there enough of us in this relationship? So in any event, I made compromises, but they didn't cost me a lot. And it took me, the way I characterized it was I probably moved 2/3 or 3/4 in terms of compromising on various issues, and he moved 1/4 or 1/3. And it looked to the world like I was giving up much more than he was. But he was using the same amount of energy to make the smaller amount of change that he was than the energy I was using. And all I noticed or cared about was he was trying as hard as I was. So in the end, these friends did keep telling me they didn't know what I was doing or why I was doing it. And I kept saying, you're not inside the relationship. You can't tell. You don't know what I'm getting and what I'm feeling. You don't know what my needs are. So in the end, each of us is responsible for our own happiness. We can share our opinions with someone else, but be careful about how you do it. If you are someone receiving advice from other people, listen to your own counsel first. I'm glad I lived the life I lived, even though they might have had me not enter that relationship from the beginning. And so when it comes to relationship advice, again, the people inside the relationship are the ones responsible for it, nobody else. That's my take on relationship counsel. Let me know what you think. Please like and follow this page. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let us know if you have any suggestions, and I'll see you on the next BAMMER Tales or BAMMER Talks. Thanks. Goodbye.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube page and sign up for notifications of future upcoming episodes. You can also be part of the BAMMER community by going to my Instagram page at BAMMER47, to following me on our podcast episode series, BAMMER and Me, or going to our website, BAMMER.co, with stories submitted by LGBTQ people around the world. Thanks again. See you soon. Bye.